Hey guys, Steve here again. I hope you're doing okay. This is a sort of part two of a little video I did before on Philippians 4. This one is going to be on Matthew 6, verses 25 to 34. And it's all to do with this issue of what do we do when worry, when anxiety and fear grips our hearts? Like, what do we actually do as Christians? And this time of this, horrible pandemic that we're going through gives us an opportunity to learn some disciplines and self-reflect and grow in grace and grow in God through the challenges, through the suffering. So that famous expression, the same sun, the same suffering, the same hardship, that the same sun that hardens the clay melts the wax. So this challenge, this experience we're going through will be either hardening us or softening us. Will be making us more beautiful or more bitter. Will be growing us or will be withering. So how do we make sure we grow? How do we make sure we process those emotions well? And I shared that I hadn't been really sort of anxious about the whole pandemic so far. I hadn't really gripped me. I'd seen the challenges and all, but it hadn't sort of personally taken hold of me. And just the other night at 1:30 in the morning, I woke up with real anxiety, real fear, particularly around money, and the crisis and the financial crash and what was being said on the news and it sort of gripped me. And I thought, whoa, this is really big, and it sort of got me for the first time. And two passages that I've then used in my life when, particularly actually around money, when Leanne and I have been struggling, or I've been struggling financially, we've used to help us process and to trust God in our uncertainty financially is Philippians 4 and Matthew 6. Matthew 6, very famous, Jesus teaching on the Sermon on the Mount. And he's actually teaching around money. So in verse 19, he says, do not store up treasures for yourself on earth, where moth and rust destroy and thieves come in and steals, stuff on earth that we can't, is not secure. He says, store up your treasure in heaven. And then he says, for where your treasure is, there your heart is. In other words, the anxiety and the fears reveals your heart and it reveals your treasure. And if your treasure's on earth and therefore it's vulnerable, your heart will be shown to be on earthly things. Whereas if your treasure's in heaven, your heart will be secure. It won't be anxious because your treasure is not something that can be got at. It is secure. It's in heaven. It's safe. So what do we do, maybe particularly around money, when we get anxious? We'll run to very famous words of Jesus in Matthew chapter 6. He says, therefore, I tell you, do not worry about your life, what you will eat or drink, or about your body. So he says, do not worry. So worry is the opposite of faith, and worry is the opposite of prayer. And he gives you some reasons on why we should not worry. And the first reason, I guess, or first discipline, I should say, not he does give us reasons, but what's the first thing we do? Well, we examine our hearts. And we reorder our loves. So hence why he said earlier, you can't serve both God and money. That's verse 24. Then he says, therefore, do not worry, verse 25. He says, if you've really looked at your heart, and if God really is your treasure, if he really is your joy, if he really is your delight, if all your significance, security, happiness is in him, he says, therefore, do not worry. So when we do worry, it means something else is in the place of God, giving us security, significance, happiness. What do you do when it's going wrong? What do you say? Oh, yeah, but if I have this, I'm okay. Everything else, as long as I have this, I'll be secure, I'll be happy. And if the answer's not God, then we have an idol. And God is saying, in this time of suffering, examine your heart. What is important? What is needed? What brings you ultimate, eternal security? Is it something that's in heaven, where your name is written and you're secure, or something on earth, which is very vulnerable to moth and rust and thieves and all other things, and pandemics, revealing that our earth is not stable and secure? So first of all, examine your heart. Second of all, look at the birds and look at the grass. I've been going on a lovely walk around my morning park, in the morning in my local park, where I've never noticed, and in my garden, you might be able to hear them now, just birds everywhere. Wonderful, beautiful springtime, the singing of the birds, and the beautiful grass and the greenery that's coming up around us as it's spring. Winter is over, spring is here. Jesus says, look at God's creation to help you combat your fear. So he says, verse 26, look at the birds in the air. They do not store or reap away, or they do not sow or reap or store away in barns, and yet your heavenly Father feeds them. Are you not much more valuable? In other words, if God is caring for the birds, you're more valuable than them. Therefore, you don't need to worry about the future because He loves you and you're valuable to him, and he's going to take care of you. And then verse 28, and why do you worry? See the lilies of the field. They do not labor or spin, yet I tell you, not even Solomon in all his splendor was dressed like one of these. If that is how God clothes the grass of the field, which is here today and tomorrow is thrown into the fire, how much more will he clothe you, O you of little faith? So look at the birds and look at the grass, because they reveal to you the character of your Father in heaven. When life is uncertain, when fear grips your heart, don't look inside. Don't look at what you can do. Don't look at the world around you and go, what can they do? Look at the character of your Father in heaven. Who is he? He's faithful. He's reliable. He's the same yesterday, today, and forever. He's been looking after the birds and the grass for years. We're valuable to him, more valuable than the birds and the grass, and yet he cares for them. He will care for us. Accept his wise ordering of your life. And I encourage you, go for walks and actually look at birds and actually look at the grass. That's what Jesus is the command. Look, go and do it and be reassured by your Heavenly Father's character. So examine your heart. Is God really first? Secondly, look at the birds and look at the grass. Thirdly, I just think be pragmatic. I think this is absolutely marvelous stuff from Jesus. Is the greatest teacher, moral teacher of all time, and he says this: "Who of you by worrying can add a single hour to your life?" Verse 27, or a single cubit to your height. It doesn't actually gain you anything. He says at the end, therefore, do not worry about tomorrow, for tomorrow will worry about itself. Each day has enough trouble of its own. In other words, Jesus isn't saying that nothing bad will happen. He says, no, there was trouble today and there'll be trouble tomorrow. And he's not saying that grass lasts forever. He says, no, it's here today and gone tomorrow. So he's not saying that nothing bad will happen or our lives won't be over. He's saying, what is the point of worrying about that? It's the classic, take control of what you can take control of and don't try and take control of what you can't take control of. And so that famous old prayer, serenity, courage, wisdom. Lord, give me serenity, peace, for the things I cannot change, courage for the things I can change, and wisdom to know the difference between the two. Serenity, courage, wisdom. Jesus is saying it's just absolutely no good worrying. It just doesn't get you anywhere. It doesn't help you. It only takes hours off your life. It only causes you stress, anxiety. It causes your shoulders to feel heavy, your heart, your chest. It causes you to snap at your family and friends and your loved ones. Worrying does not help. So Jesus is very pragmatic. He's not saying bad things won't happen. He's saying just don't worry, because they're in God's hands and not yours. So examine your heart. Who's really your treasure? If your treasure's in heaven, you're secure. You'll find joy in God, in the gospel, in what he's done for you, in your salvation, in the Spirit filling you, in the community of brothers and sisters around the world, in the chance that you can approach the throne of grace and find grace from God as you pray, or rejoice in God. Examine your heart. Secondly, look at the birds and the grass. They reveal the character of God and his loving care over your life. Thirdly, be pragmatic. Don't worry. It doesn't help. Not gonna give you worst case scenario. The Apostle Paul, for me to live as Christ, to die as gain. Worst case scenario. It's okay. It's okay. Worst case scenario is okay. And fourthly, then, seek first his kingdom. He sort of concludes, doesn't he? Verse 33, but seek first his kingdom and his righteousness, and all these things will be given to you as well. So stop building your kingdom. Stop trying to secure your empire. Seek his today. How can you love him and love your neighbor today? How can you demonstrate your trust in him today? Seek first his kingdom. Take your eyes off yourself, your false motives, your worries, your false loves, and seek his kingdom, because his kingdom is a kingdom of peace and joy and righteousness. So there's promises to lay hold of, and there's the character of God to rely on. Are you going to listen to your emotions? Are you going to let them dictate? Or are you going to find Matthew 6 and are you going to say, I'm looking at my heart, Lord, what do I really treasure? I'm looking at the birds and the grass and I'm seeing your character revealed. I can trust you're going to care for me. I'm looking at this practically. It's no good worrying. What's it going to do? Worst case scenario is okay. You're in charge. You're in control. If I die, I go to heaven. And therefore, I'm looking at your kingdom today. How can I seek your kingdom today? Live today. God has given you this day. Live today. Guys, we all find anxiety, fear grips our hearts. I have found Philippians chapter 4, 4-9, Matthew 6, 25 to 34 to be lifelines to me, to be things that just help me process my emotions, my fears, my doubts, everything. They help me go to God. Psalm 46 verse 10 says, "Be still and know that I am God." Be still in Matthew 6 and know that he is God. There's nothing to fear because he's with us. And he's working out his great sovereign plan. And we can't understand it this side of history, but we'll understand it in eternity. So store up treasure in heaven where you're safe and secure and your name is written. God bless you.